I cannot hear myself. Anyone hear me? What is going on? I think no one can hear me. Oh, I see. Sorry, that was a technical block from previous weeks. Welcome everyone. It is 3 p.m. and it's time for the server room show. This is episode 51. I will talk about alternatives to GitHub, and I think my background music is loud. I have to lower it a little bit. Yeah, just like that. I want to mention that last week and probably the week before I got confused ever again of UTC and all these time changes, and I was not here. Well, I was here but with an hour late to do episode 50, which was the interview with Dr. Marshall Kirk McCusick. So to do good by that error of mine, I will rebroadcast that 50-minute interview next Saturday, which is the 14th of November. You're gonna be able to listen on Tilde Radio and then on radio in a 50-minute slot at 3 p.m. UTC of the interview with Dr. Marshall Kirk McCusick, because I didn't air it live last week because of my error. So, alternatives to GitHub. GitHub started back in 2008. It was developed in Ruby on Rails. GitHub provides hosting for software development and version control using Git. It offers the distributed version control and source code management functionality of Git, plus its own features. It provides access control and several collaboration features such as bug tracking, feature requests, task management, continuous integration, and wikis for every project. GitHub offers unlimited private repositories to all plans, including free accounts. Starting from April 15 of 2020, the free plan allows unlimited collaborators but restricts private repositories to 2000 actions minutes per month. Since 2012, Microsoft became a prominent, significant user of GitHub service, using it to host open source projects and development tools such as .NET Core, Chakra Core, MS Build, PowerShell, PowerToys, Visual Studio Code, Windows Calculator, Windows Terminal, and so on. The issue is that Microsoft ended up buying GitHub in 2018, which now operates as a subsidiary of Microsoft. GitHub and Microsoft made it to the news recently on the 23rd of October 2020, when the RIA issued DMCA takedown notice to GitHub to take down YouTube DL and its forks. And here we are in the present, me talking about GitHub alternatives today. But you would ask, why is it such a problem? Well, if just the very fact that it is owned and operated by Microsoft was not enough for you, then this recent event of takedown of YouTube DL and its forks, which is essentially a command line tool to be able to download YouTube videos. The RIA was claiming that it is a tool to be used to illegally make downloads, copies of copyrighted music videos, for example, which are hosted on YouTube, amongst other reasoning for or in their claim. This kind of reasoning and accusations is exactly the same when people blame firearms for crimes committed by mentally unstable individuals using any kind of tool or firearm. The fault, as always, lies with the individual and the use case he or she is applying with a tool. In this case, it's YouTube DL or a firearm, to stay with that analogy. You can use it just like anything else in this world, to do bad or to do good. A car, a knife, a radio, remote control, anything in this world can be used in a good or in a bad way, to do good or to do harm. Sure, you can use it to download copyrighted material or videos from YouTube, which you are not supposed to, or you have no right to do so. But many people, including myself and many other people who actually live from making videos for YouTube, uses it to do quickly and efficiently backup or archiving of their own videos. which they host on YouTube, and to make a quick backup or download them and safe keep them. Even myself, I have the YouTube videos of this podcast on YouTube, the live streaming video you're probably looking at right now, unless you only listening mode in like a cat. I also use the YouTube DL to download quickly and efficiently and easily my own videos, so I was not really doing any bad with it. So yeah, just like Firearm, YouTube DL can be used for good or bad, but following this logic and argument, we shall ban all wheeled motor vehicles, cause there are people who use them to make car bombs or grab a purse of someone on the street sitting on a motorbike or scooter to get away quick. Of course, this event rubbed many people the bad way, including myself, and it made me look more into alternatives to GitHub platform, even though I was never an avid user of GitHub or other development and version controlling system. However, at work I have to use more and more GitHub, because we are tied to GitHub in at least the software development department, where I am also placed as a system administrator. Those guys I tie to GitHub, and I tend to use GitHub more often than I would like to, or I'm accustomed to. And yeah, you can imagine that many people voice that perhaps RIA and Microsoft deserves each other, but perhaps we deserve something better than them. So I cannot agree more with this statement. But let's look at first Git versus GitHub versus SVN. Git is a distributed version control system for tracking changes in source code during software development. It is designed for coordinating work among programmers, but it can be used to track changes in any set of files. Its goals include speed, data integrity, and support for distributed non-linear workflows. Git was created by Linus Torvalds in 2005 for development of the Linux kernel, with other kernel developers contributing to its initial development. After many developers of the Linux kernel gave up access to Bitkeeper, a proprietary source control management system that they had been using to maintain the project since 2002. As with most other distributed version control systems, and unlike most client-server systems, every Git directory on every computer is a full-fledged repository with complete history and full version tracking capabilities, independent of network access or a central server. This will come important when we compare it to SVN. GitHub is a cloud service allowing to handle Git repositories online with additional features, as I commented in the beginning of this episode. SVN, on the other hand, Apache Subversion, which is often abbreviated SVN after its command name SVN, is a software versioning and revision control system distributed as open source under the Apache license. Software developers use Subversion to maintain current and historical versions of files, such as source code, web pages, and documentation. Its goal is to be a mostly compatible successor to the widely used concurrent version system CVS. While Git and SVN are both enterprise version control systems that help with workflow and project management in coding, they do have their differences. The difference between Git and SVN version control system is that Git is a distributed version control system, whereas SVN is a centralized version control system. In Subversion or SVN, you are checking out a single version of the repository. With SVN, your data is stored on a central server. This means that Subversion allows you to store a record of the changes made to a project, but the history is stored on a central server. Unlike Git, which is distributed, you need to have constant I made a mistake in the text. So the thing is that with SVN you need constant access to the repository to make and push changes. However, with Git you can make changes locally, and then you can commit or push them later when you have a network connection. I had an error on my text in the show notes. So if you look at my screen, you can see that that's pretty much the main difference between Git and SVN. That SVN is a centralized server repository, whereas Git is each checked out repository is a full-fledged on its own, and you can make changes on your own, and you can push them without when you have a network connection later on at some point. Whereas for SVN, you pretty much, for any action you want to make, you need to be connected to the central server, and sometimes it can be a bit of a pain. It does have its pros and cons, of course, as you think about it, that you have more control on the sense of audit and who can access and when can access. For example, if you put an SVN central repository behind firewalls and VPNs, then you can control who accesses it with of course with the VPN and with the required credentials. With Git, this granular control is not really there, or not that much there, but yeah, there are people who know this much better than me. Alternatives to GitHub. Gitlab would be the first one, which is a web-based DevOps lifecycle tool that provides a Git repository manager, providing wiki, issue tracking, and continuous integration, and development pipeline features using an open source license developed by Gitlab Inc. The software was originally created by Ukrainian developers. The product was originally named Gitlab and was fully free and open source software distributed under the MIT license. In July 2013, the product was split into two distinct versions, Gitlab CE as of Community Edition and Gitlab EE Enterprise Edition. At that time, the license of both remained the same, being both free and open source software distributed under the MIT license. In January 2017, a database administrator accidentally deleted the production database in the aftermath of a cyber attack. 6 hours worth of issue and merge requests data was lost. The recovery process was live streamed on YouTube. It's quite an interesting bit of fact. Gitlab runs gitlab.com on a freemium and offers a subscription service. It has various plans, including a free tier, and all plans have unlimited collaborators and private or public repositories. It mostly what it offers would be enough for most of us. Interestingly, it also has option to self-host, which as you know me, it's self-hosting is the best way to do things. Bitbucket is a web-based version control repository hosting service owned by Atlassian for source code and development projects that use either Mercurial or Git revision control systems. Bitbucket offers both commercial plans and free accounts. It offers free accounts with an unlimited number of private repositories, which can have up to 5 users in the case of free accounts as of September 2010. However, open source projects can request community license above 5 members to remain free. It integrates with other Atlassian products such as Jira, which can be interesting to people or organizations which already tied to the Atlassian brand, so to say. Perhaps they already have Jira, they perhaps use Confluence for the document management system, then perhaps Bitbucket comes as a good choice, as it integrates with the rest of the Atlassian products, and sometimes that's desired by the companies. Sourceforge is a web-based service that offers software developers a centralized online location to control and manage free and open source software projects. It provides a source code repository, bug tracking, mirroring of downloads for load balancing, a wiki for documentation, developer and user mailing lists, user support forums, user-written reviews and ratings, news bulletin, microblog for publishing project updates and other features. Sourceforge was one of the first to offer this service free of charge to open source projects. Since 2012, the website has run on Apache Alura software. Sourceforge offers free access to hosting and tools for developers of free and open source software. As of September 2020, the Sourceforge repository claimed to host more than 500,000 projects and had more than 3.7 million registered users. Launchpad is a web application and website that allows users to develop and maintain software, particularly open source software. It is developed and maintained by Canonical Ltd. It has several parts: answers, a community support site and knowledge base, blueprints, system for tracking new features, bugs, bug tracker that allows bug to be tracked in multiple contexts, for example in an Ubuntu package as an upstream or in remote bug trackers, code, source code hosting with the support for the Bazaar and Git version control systems, translations, a site for localizing applications into different human languages. Launchpad has good support for Git. You can host or import Git repositories on Launchpad, and this is entirely free. Google Cloud source repositories. You can get free unlimited private repositories to organize your code in a way that works best for you. You can mirror code from GitHub or Bitbucket repositories to get powerful code search, code browsing and diagnostic capabilities. It integrates with other services from Google, for example deploy changes directly from branches or tags in your repository to App Engine. App Engine is Google's platform as a service and cloud computing platform for developing and hosting web applications in Google managed data centers. Applications are sandboxed and run across multiple servers, so you can integrate your repository and you can push, for example, directly from Google Cloud source repositories to for example Google's App Engine, and it integrates with other services as well. You can automatically build and test your source code using Cloud Build service to automatically build and test an image when changes are pushed to cloud source repositories. It has a free tier up to 5 users with a total of 50 gigabyte of storage with 50 gigabyte of egress traffic limit per month. AWS Code Commit. AWS Code Commit is a version control service hosted by Amazon Web Services that you can use to privately store and manage assets such as documents, source code, and binary files in the cloud. AWS Code Commit is a similar alternative to Google Cloud source repositories. Just like the Google Cloud platform, AWS also provides a free tier that does not end when the trial ends. So it is free forever if your usage is within the free tier limits as mentioned in their official documentation. You can have 5 users and 50 gigabyte of storage for free to start with. If you want to add more users, you can do it for $1 per extra user for the resources you already have. Fabricator is an all-in-one tool that lets you host code and discuss plan to keep working on a project without needing to utilize separate applications for communication and collaboration. You can audit source codes, manage tasks, manage workboard, note things down, and do a lot of things. It is self-hostable, which is, as you know, always good. It's completely open source, completely free. There is no restrictions or limitations, and you can just host it for yourself. If you want to go with the hosted version, they charge like $20 per user per month. It does include supports as well, and it has a top limit on the cost, so the cost stops when you reach 50 users, so you pay 50 users times 20, but as you start adding on, you could say that it's after 50 users, it becomes unlimited. Well, it's a lot of money, 50 times 20. And GOGS, personally my favorite, and the one I started to self-host myself on my dedicated server in a virtual machine. GOG is a completely self-hosted solution to host your code. It is very lightweight, and you could also, or I could even also, run it on a Raspberry Pi, or you can just run it in a low power $5 VPS from the likes of Linode or DigitalOcean, for example, or Contabo for those German data center lovers. I have a dedicated server in a German data center, so I know what I'm talking about. It's very quick to be up and running with GOGS. I was up and running with it around in a matter of 5 to 10 minutes, and I could use Git repositories or Git commands to do what I need to do, and it's very, very lightweight. It's very easy to set up. If I had to say which one to try out first from the self-hosting ones, I would say try the GOGS. And if you want any of the cloud offers, then you could try the Google Cloud Source repositories or the Aws Code Commit. But that's just my opinion. I mean, it depends on your needs and the size of your team. So it's not entirely my call, but that's my recommendation. Gitlab is an open source Forge software package for hosting software development version control using Git, as well as other collaborative features like backtracking, wikis, and code review. It supports self-hosting, but also provides a free public first-party instance hosted on DD's cloud. It is a fork of GOGS, and it's also written in Go. Gitlab can be hosted on all platforms supported by Go, including Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. The project is funded, and the project is funded on Open Collective. So Gitlab is a forge of GOGS. That's why it's the same lightweight and easy to have up and running with it. Apache Allura is an open source Forge software for managing source code repositories, bug reports, discussion, wiki pages, blogs, and more for any number of individual projects. Allura graduated from incubation with the Apache Software Foundation in March 2013. Allura can manage any number of projects, including groups of projects known as neighborhoods, as well as projects under individual projects. Allura also has a modular design to support tools attached to neighborhoods or individual projects. Allura comes packaged with many tools, and additional external and third-party tools also can be installed. There are tools to manage version control for source code repositories, ticket tracking, discussion, wiki pages, blogs, and more. Allura can also export project data as well as import data from a variety of sources, such as Track, Google Code, GitHub, and of course Allura itself. I left links in the show notes, as always, so you can have a look what's going on there. And yes, episodes like this really makes me happy in a sense that not because the incident of YouTube DL takedown happened, but because sometimes you have the feeling that until something like this happens, like the takedown of YouTube DL, people are not willing to assess, or not willing to recognize that when very big corporations like the likes of Microsoft are in charge, such a widely used tool, let's say like GitHub, what kind of a tyranny is it? You know, that how much you are in, there is no better way to say it, that like if it was a giant holding GitHub or all the users of GitHub in its hand, and could crash it with a moment's notice. And the problem is that a giant like this, a giant like Microsoft, always bends on the wishes and of organizations like RIAA and the DMCA takedown notices, and these takedown notices and these arguments are not always just black and white, as you see. There are a lot of green area in the middle, or gray area in the middle. It's easy to see just the bad in a tool or the use case of a tool. But again, as in the very beginning of this episode I said, every tool can be used to do good or to do bad, and it seems that the RIA doesn't know that, and always want to see the bad in every tool and everything. And a giant like Microsoft operating GitHub, it seems that what happened to YouTube DL will happen to any other tool or any other repository, better say, in the future on GitHub. I remember that when Microsoft bought GitHub, there were articles and everything, people looking for alternatives and everything. But then after a couple of months maybe or so, typically as the news settled down, people just forgot about this, and they were happy to live their life in ignorance. But now it's another moment of awakening, and as you saw in this episode, there are a lot of alternatives, free alternatives. You don't have to spend a cent if you don't want. If you don't want to go cloud-based because you say, oh no, because that other company XYZ could do the same, and the moment they issue a DMCA takedown notice regarding any reason, the same could happen to me there as on GitHub. Then go self-host it. Then host it for yourself. Some of these tools, the likes of Gogs and GitLab, the fork of Gogs, they need so little resources. You can run them from a Raspberry Pi or a $5, as I said, DigitalOcean or any other VPS provider for $5 a month. Of course, again, depending on the size of your team. But there are alternatives, as always in life. There are alternatives, and you don't have to stick with GitHub because I don't know, because that's the one or that's the only one you know exist. Be open and keep an open mind to listen and find alternatives, because there is not only one answer. You saw that there are so many alternatives, and I'm sure that I was just barely scratching the surface here, and I don't even count it. How many was on the list? Like 6 or 7 alternatives of GitHub. So think about it and move your repositories away from GitHub. That's all I can suggest. And see you everyone next Saturday with the special episode of the rebroadcasting of episode 51 interview with Dr. Marshall Kirk McCusick.